With the announcement that the Obama administration would be imposing sanctions on Russia over their alleged hacking into the emails of the DNC and John Podesta, well, many Americans don't necessarily seem too scared about the prospect of a new Cold War with Russia. Contrarily, many of them are actually cheerleading Obama's decision to escalate tensions with Russia. Now, I have no idea if Russia did in fact hack into those emails because we can't see the evidence. That's classified information. But what I do know is that there's contradictory evidence that we can see that suggests that the DNC emails were given to WikiLeaks by a DNC insider, not Vladimir Putin, and we also know that John Podesta's emails were potentially exposed when he fell victim to a phishing scam. But we're being asked to believe that Russia did it because multiple government agencies are telling us that that's what we're supposed to believe. You know, the same way that they told us to believe that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, because that didn't really lead to anything harmful at all, now did it? But in the end, I find this entire debacle incredibly problematic because one, well, saber-rattling against Russia is very dangerous, and I don't want a new Cold War, nor do I want a new World War with Russia. And second of all, it illustrates that the American people, including liberals, who are supposed to be the more rational, the more reasonable ones, and the more skeptical ones of government actions, well, they're willing to believe anything that the government tells them. And it really shows how the American people can be manipulated very easily. When you see exactly how the government and the media worked in tandem to convince people that Russia did in fact hack into the emails of John Podesta and the DNC. So first of all, when you want the American people to believe something without showing them the evidence, first, all you gotta do is repeat something over and over and over and over again. Case in point.
Because we have ample evidence. We've been the victim of a cybercrime. We have ample evidence. We have ample evidence. The Democratic National Committee, as Secretary Clinton alluded to tonight, was a victim of a cybercrime. That the Democratic Party was a victim of a cybercrime. Russian hacker.
The Russians by the Russians, the Russian government, the Russians illegally stole these emails.
But you see, simply saying over and over again that Russia hacked into the emails of John Podesta and the DNC, that doesn't really distract people from the substance of what was found in those emails. So what you got to do then is up the ante and muddy the waters a little bit.
Vladimir Putin himself directed the covert cyber attacks against our electoral system, against our democracy.
See, now we have a story with that type of rhetoric because it directly implicates Vladimir Putin in not just the hacking of these emails now, but in the hacking of, quote, our electoral system.
Covert cyber attacks against our electoral system.
And now this will encourage the media to actually cover it because you can now create headlines that suggest Russia actually hacked the election. And this obviously will grab the attention of more people and lead to media outlets making more and more money based on this sensationalism. And it's certainly a better story than simply claiming that Russia hacked into the emails. If you say Russia hacked the election, well, now people are going to pay attention. So the politicians now, they can shut up about it because the media is going to take over and cover this nonstop for them to make sure that people buy into it. So for example, the article on the front page of Politico reads, "White House sanctions Russia over election hacks." They're not saying over them hacking into the emails of the DNC and John Podesta. They're saying that the White House sanctions Russia over election hacks. Hacking into the emails and hacking into the election are two very different things. Now also, the New York Times uses the words election hacking, as does The Verge and CNBC, and we've become so far removed now from the original claim that Russia simply hacked into the emails of the DNC and John Podesta, and we've become so over the top in our rhetoric that the American people will become alarmed by it and hopefully believe it. And they did. And it's funny because now people are starting to talk about it, because when you say Russia hacked the election, well, that's incredibly problematic. But if you simply say Russia hacked into the emails of the DNC and John Podesta, well, you know, that's troublesome, but that's not as bad as them just straight up hacking the election. And soon enough, the topic starts trending on Twitter, and now 50% of Democrats actually believe that Russia literally tampered with the vote tallies to help Donald Trump win. And now I have people in my own family asking me, Mike, what's going on? I mean, you know about politics, you follow this stuff. Why did Russia hack the election? And why aren't we doing anything about it? Why aren't we attacking them? This is incredibly troubling. This is incredibly troubling. I can't say that enough. I know I sound like a broken record already, but this is very scary. Russia did not hack the election. If anything, Russia hacked into the emails of the DNC and John Podesta, but we can't even confirm that because we don't have the evidence. And now, since people just believe that Russia straight up hacked into the election, which implies that they hacked voting booths, well, people who actually step back and question this narrative, like Glenn Greenwald or myself, we're labeled as traitors now, because if we don't buy into the narrative that Russia hacked the election, and we don't care that Russia hacked the election, then obviously we're Kremlin shills, right? Well, no, Russia did not hack the election. If anything, the only thing that you can prove is that Russia hacked into the emails of John Podesta and the DNC, and the extent to which that actually had an impact on the election is dubious. We can't prove that it cost Hillary Clinton the election. I would argue that Hillary Clinton lost because she ran a terrible campaign and she didn't campaign in the Rust Belt, hence why she lost in the Rust Belt states. However, we are supposed to buy into the narrative that Russia hacked the election, and if you even question it, you're a traitor. So for example, in a video where I called out Keith Olbermann for his sensationalist bullshit claim that we're at war with Russia, which we're not, I had some commenters suggest that I was either stupid because his rant went way over my head, and some even accused me of being a right-winger masquerading as a socialist, or someone from the alt-right, or a Russian attack denier even, and I've even been accused of being a Trump shill that is trying to trick people into sympathizing with the white nationalist movement. Now, I've also been called a Nazi, and now I'm suspect because I apparently have a, quote, terrorist beard. Yes, because nothing screams liberal to me more than accusing someone of being a terrorist because they have a beard. Unbelievable. Now, these are all comments that have come from so-called liberals, my fellow liberals. Now, I don't necessarily care about their comments to me because I have thick skin, but I'm embarrassed at the fact that so many liberals are willing to accept something from the government but not even question it. They've become so detached from reality that they're willing to buy into Cold War era red baiting McCarthyism again. It's just ridiculous, and if you're buying into this hysteria and don't even have a shred of skepticism in you, then you need to wake the fuck up. Because if it is the case that Russia hacked into the emails of the DNC and John Podesta, then President Obama should act to immediately declassify the intelligence that shows, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that proves that Vladimir Putin did in fact do it. But the fact that we don't have the evidence in front of us, and so many liberals are willing to believe it nonetheless and not even just maybe question it, that's a big problem. I mean, for once, just think for yourself and question whether or not this is a distraction from the substance of what was revealed in those emails, regardless of who leaked them to WikiLeaks. It exposed overt corruption with Hillary Clinton. It exposed how the DNC tried to sabotage Bernie Sanders at the behest of Hillary Clinton. That's unacceptable, and what that reveals is incredibly problematic. But this distraction from what was in those emails is what we're supposed to be talking about, and nobody even wants to question now whether or not Russia is guilty. How about this? If they're guilty, show us the evidence. Me simply saying those words doesn't make me a traitor. It doesn't make me a Russian shill. That just makes me reasonable. And I don't think, regardless of who's responsible for leaking these emails, that starting a new Cold War or potentially World War III is worthwhile, all so that way Hillary Clinton can have a distraction from her overt corruption. And I'm sorry, but it's time that liberals actually be liberal. We raise our standard of scrutiny for things. We don't just accept what the government tells us, especially after Iraq. After Iraq, after the hundreds of thousands of lives that were cost, I'm never going to just accept anything the government tells me again. I'm going to question it. And when we can't see the evidence, if that information is classified, then I'm sorry, I'm not going to accept that Russia hacked into the emails of the DNC or John Podesta, and I'm certainly not going to accept that Russia hacked the election, and anyone who says that needs to cut it out because they did not hack the election. There's no evidence that Russia tampered with voting booths, and the fact that 50% of liberals now buy into that narrative is not just scary, but it's frustrating because I thought liberals were better than this, but apparently I was wrong.
I take the threat very seriously. I take the fact that he develops weapons of mass destruction very seriously. History has called us into action that we love freedom, that we'll be deliberate, patient, and strong in the values that we adhere to. But we can't let the world's worst leaders blackmail, threaten, hold freedom-loving nations hostage with the world's worst weapons.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.